Let's talk about rebuilding our lives. I believe a lot of women who are 40 and above, a lot of times we are in a place where we are having to rebuild. Either you're rebuilding your life after something has happened. Maybe you've had a loss, maybe you lost a job, you lost your home, you lost uh, children, or a divorce, or whatever. Something at this stage in our lives, something has happened, and a lot of us have to rebuild. And you could be rebuilding from zero, from nothing, or you're rebuilding from something. Um, when I say nothing, I mean like, financially or maybe career wise or business wise. But I really don't think we rebuild from exactly nothing, not at this stage. I think we have gained a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge to know that we are not really starting from zero, even though it might feel like it, right? Financially, it might feel like you're starting from zero. Work-wise, it might feel like you're starting from zero. But in reality, I don't believe that's what it is. So that's what you're going to talk about is rebuilding. Hi, my name is Janet. Welcome to the Second Act Collective. And here we talk about all things to do with womanhood, with women over 40 and beyond, and the issues, the joys, the pain, the things that we run into at this age. So let me just start saying, let me start by saying, how do we rebuild? Because really that's what I want to look into. How do we rebuild after a loss, after a change, a transition, or whatever it is that has happened to us, or that is happening to us at this moment? How do you go on to then rebuild? And I think it's important that we kind of look at the how do we rebuild, because we can talk about all the, and I think I've covered some of this, all the things we've gone through, all the things we're going through, and kind of, excuse me, talk a lot about that. But what we want to know is, okay, I'm going through this transition. This has happened to me. How do I move forward? How do I rebuild? So I want to tell you about, the kitchen that you see that I'm living in right now, that I'm in. And when we bought this house years ago, and if I have a picture, I'll put it somewhere up there. The kitchen didn't look like this when we bought the house. The house was in disarray. It was neglected. It was just not, I mean, you wouldn't want to live here, the way it looks. But we came in, and I was actually the first one to see the house before my husband. And I just felt like this was the house God, gave us. And I walked around and I could envision myself here in a different setting, because at that time it was not pretty at all. There was so much damage. The cabinets were falling apart. Everything was falling apart. And what we realized we had to do was to completely gut everything out. So we took out everything and even had to rebuild, some walls, some internal walls. So this was a renovation project, right? Where we came in, we saw the disaster that it was. It was. And, it wasn't as nice looking as it is now. But we saw the disaster that it was. We saw the work that had to be put in, the damage that had been done. And you assess the damage and you figure out, okay, can I buy this house and then also afford to renovate it, right? Because it was in the right neighborhood. It had the number of bedrooms that I wanted. So I saw the potential when I walked the house of the kids that I wanted to have. At that time, we had two kids, and I was, we're considering having a third one. So we knew we wanted to have a number of bedrooms that would fit the kids and ourselves and, visitors and stuff. So even amongst the disaster, we kind of could see the potential, could see what we could do with the house. We could see what could become of the house for it to be what it is today. I had to have that vision. I had to look beyond what had happened in the home to bring it to a place that it was. I had to look beyond what it looked like for the time that, and we also had to assess, okay, how long would this take? It ended up taking us a year to do the house because we also didn't want to live in it while we're doing it. There was a lot of work that had to be done. Not just in the house itself, but also outside because the yard wasn't okay. So there was a lot of work. But these are the assessments that we did. And I'm saying this because I want you to think of the life or what we consider to have been the loss, the thing that has happened to you, to me, where we're now in a place where we have to rebuild. We can look at the disaster and the mess and be overwhelmed with it. And I know like a lot of people came through this house and were overwhelmed with the amount of work that had to be done, even the structural work that had to be done on the foundation. And they were overwhelmed. And they would just say, no, we can't buy that. It's too much work. But the difference with us is that we own the construction company, right? So any work in a home is not going to be a lot of work. It's just at the time, it was a challenge that we welcomed because we knew we could turn this into something that would be spectacular, something that would love, a home that we could live in. So when you look at your life and you're looking at the mess that has happened, you're looking, because we're talking now about how we rebuild, you have to assess the mess. You are looking at it sometimes, you're going through it, the emotional trauma, the emotional upheaval, everything, the financial disaster, the job loss, the company loss, the whatever, and you're having to rebuild. So you come into this situation and you can again, you can look around your life and be overwhelmed, like a lot of people did on this house. Or you can look at a life and see there is a potential, because I do believe that as long as we're alive, that means, God's mercies on you every morning. That means there's potential for you, for greatness, for you to even have a better life than what you had. There's always that potential. Whether we rise up to the occasion or not is something else, but the potential is there. So you are starting knowing things about yourself. Like you would walk in here as a builder, as myself, and know, okay, I have to work on this and this and this. So I know the things about the house, what can be renovated and how much it's going to cost, right? So there's an advantage that we have in the second act, is that we're looking at the situation we're in and realizing I need to rebuild. But you know yourself now, right? You know yourself, you know the person you are, you know who you are, you know what drains you, you know the costs to a lot of things of this rebuild that you're going to do. You are more aware of yourself. And I think that is the wonderful thing about being, over 40, because you have lived life. So you're at a very different place. You're not building from the same way you did when you were in your 20s, when you really didn't know yourself, didn't know what you want, didn't know anything much about yourself. You were learning yourself in the process of building a life. Now you're at a place where you are not second guessing yourself anymore. You have more clarity about who you are. You have more clarity about what you want, what you desire. So it's like honestly looking at a renovation project and saying, this for us, this was our second home, right? And we had been in another house we had renovated. So I kind of knew how my family worked. I kind of knew, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use a lot of construction and remodeling stuff because that's from the world I'm from and what kind of resonates with me when I look at life and I look at the things that have to be rebuilt in my own life and in other people's lives. Right? So I now knew the kitchen that I wanted, because this kitchen didn't look like this at all. Right? So we had to put pencil on paper and draw the thing that we could envision, because I knew something about myself, what I liked and how much I like to cook and how much I like to entertain. I also knew about how my family functioned and what was the optimal space and how we could renovate the house in the rooms that we wanted and how they were to be so that we could have the life that we wanted. We could live in peace, we could live and be happy in the house. And that's the same for you. You are in a place where you know yourself to now know, okay, I don't want that. I know I don't want my life to look like that. I don't want to tolerate that, right? This is what happens when you are in that second act, when you are in this place. And I don't know if I introduced myself, but my name is Janet, and welcome to the second act. I hope this is not the second time that I'm doing this, but anyway, this is what happens when you post every day, which is what I'm doing. So here we go. Something else in rebuilding is that you have to let go of the identity that you built when you're young. And I talk a lot about identity because a lot of work that happens in our second act is really more in our work, identity work, so that we can then have the confidence, the boldness to walk into whatever the new stage or the thing we're transitioning into. So you have to let go of that identity, right? So I had to let go of what this house looked like and envision the thing that I wanted it to be, what it could, the potential that it is. So it's separating what you want from what you were maybe told you should want. Because a lot of times in our 20s and 30s, we're building a life based on what other people expect of us, family, friends, parents, whoever, or what the society has made us think that's what we want, or whatever. We're building out of performance, improving, and not necessarily out of authentic selves, not necessarily out of intention and what actually matters to us and what we value. So now you have to let go of that. And this comes in form of letting go of your past. That it's important that you let go of the past. You let go of the mistakes you have made. And I think in this place also, in rebuilding ourselves, you have to be able to forgive yourself, not just other people, because yeah, there are people who might have hurt you and done stuff to you. But a lot of times is the unforgiveness we hold towards ourselves and the shame and the guilt and the regrets that we carry that really affects how we then rebuild. Because in this stage of our lives, we want to build things from a very different place. And we're not building haphazardly. We're building with intention. So letting go of the regrets, letting go of identities, letting go of the shame, letting go of whatever you have carried of unforgiveness towards yourself, and just saying, I'm going to build this life, this stage of my life from now on a different way. And so you're required to let go. This is kind of how we start the rebuilding process, so that we're not building on old foundations. And this is another thing that we have to be very careful of. We don't want to build on old foundations that are cracked, that are no longer serving us, that are no longer what actually we value. We want to build from a place where if we have to put new foundations, then we build those foundations. Not necessarily do we have to destroy everything in our lives and rebuild. No, sometimes there are things we can take from this area, from that area, and use them and really build the life that we have in a very different way. So, but again, it's letting go. It's letting go and forgiveness. And I cannot stress this one enough. The importance of forgiving yourself, especially women. We tend not to want to forgive ourselves. And sometimes we don't even realize that we are not forgiving ourselves. It's easy to forgive others and not actually forgive ourselves. So this is, part of the things that you have to do as you're transitioning, as you are in your second act, is to really forgive yourself. And I need to check something here to make sure. Okay. I was just checking to make sure that I was actually recording, because I've done this before where I'm like talking, and then realize, oh no, I didn't record myself. So I think we're good. All right. So that is one of the things, letting go of identities, letting go of shame, letting go of regrets to rebuild. All right. What else do we need to do in this rebuilding process is that we are going to build with less, right? Because sometimes when we're building in our 20s and 30s, we are kind of I don't know. At that time, I guess we have, and when I say less, I'm talking about in terms of energy, in terms of resources, in terms of time. A lot of times when we're younger, we do have the energy, we do have the time, we do have plenty of resources, right? Especially financial. You could be in a place where you have those resources. And a lot of times in the second acts, you don't have as much energy, you don't have as much time, you might not have as much resources, right? So we're gonna build with less, but be truer to ourselves, but build something that is strong, that is lasting. Again, we're trying to build a life that we're not trying to run away from, because we don't want a vacation from our own lives. Not that you shouldn't take vacations. I love vacations. I'm just saying, I have been in a place where I wanted to take a vacation from my own life. And that I think had to do more with just, the business was so busy and raising kids at the same time. Like there was so much pressure that I looked forward to taking a vacation, because I'm like, I need a vacation from my own life. I'm so overwhelmed. But in this second act, we're not trying to build lives that we have to escape. We are trying to build lives that we actually enjoy and love, and we love this life. And so it's important that even though we're building less, we're doing it in a true manner, in what matters to us, what we value, and what is important to us. So that's kind of, the rebuilding process, as we're looking through all this process of us rebuilding. And you also have to do something else you have to recognize is the difference between reinvention and continuation, right? So you have to realize, to kind of figure out, what am I carrying forward, which is continuation, versus what am I leaving behind, which is you are reinventing yourself and leaving the past behind. There's a lot of past that needs to be left. Like I talked about, things like your regrets, your failures, your mistakes, your shame. A lot of those things have to be totally left behind. So we need to figure out, what is it that we're going to carry forward, and we're doing it with intentional. We're being very intentional about it. What are we carrying forward? What is it that really God wants us to take into this next season of life, and what needs to stay behind? And sometimes that can look like friendships or relationships. That can look like, work acquaintances or people in your life. That can look like maybe an area where you've lived and you have to move to a different place. That can look like a different country altogether, like you need to move to a different. What is it that needs to be left behind for you to become this person? Because that's what it's about. Who you're becoming. What needs to stay in your past? Who in your life, the people in your life needs to stay in your past. So you can step into this new version of you, this person you're becoming. So what does that look like? So know that difference as you're rebuilding. Know the difference of reinvention and continuation. Know what you're carrying forward. What are you taking with you? What relationships are moving into this new season with you? Because I'm such a strong believer for a lot of relationships have seasons, especially friendships. And even some family relationships have seasons. That not everybody in your life is meant to move with you to the next phase, to the next season of your life. Again, I'm going to talk about my saying that you have to learn to hold people loosely, things loosely, so that God can allow them to come through your life and flow out of your life if they need to. So we don't want to hold on to relationships that God might be saying it's time to go. We don't want to hold on to things that might have outlived their seasons in our lives. And what I've seen for myself is, I feel like a lot of times relationships that I know a lot of times ahead of time that this relationship is not going anywhere, or that it has, come to the end of its season. But I do resist, because I don't want to hurt people. I also myself have been very comfortable in that relationship. I don't want to let it go. But I've known all the relationship that I've had to eventually let go. I've known ahead of time that the season has come. And And I've learned my lesson because I feel like if I don't, it's like God is showing me that the season has come to an end and I'm, resisting and refusing for whatever reason I come up with. That what ends up happening, something actually ends up happening that is like that the relationship end up ending in a very like not so good way. No, it's not God's fault. I think it's a lot to do with me being disobedient. And I'm like, if I had just addressed this a year ago, if I had moved away 2 years ago from this relationship, I wouldn't be in this situation in the first place, because now something has happened that is even more dramatic than it needed to be when I knew all along that this relationship was over. So I don't know. I mean, there's some people, I happen to be one of those people who just know, like, okay, this is not. And and understanding the seasons of relationship is important, because then you can and okay, something else I need to say about this, about relationships and seasons, is that somebody can be in your life for one season and then not be in your life for another season for years and years, 10, 15 years, and then they'll come back to your life for another season. So there are people like that in our lives that, we are very close friends, have a good relationship with them. Then we kind of wander off and do our own thing, our own lives. And then later on, I think women tend to do this a lot. Then later on, we kind of reconnect and we have a very different relationship. I've had friendships like that too. So when we are holding things loosely, it's because we can just say to God, if they need to leave, they need to leave for now. And I'm letting them go. And if they're going to come back, they'll come back. Because what you don't want, and not to make this about friendships, this video about friendship, but I need to talk about this. What we don't want is for us to hold on to people who are going to affect our destiny. Because I am a true believer that what God has for us. Oh, okay. I do need to pause right here, and my battery is dying. So I'm going to pause and get the charger and back. Okay, so I'm back. Where were we? Talking about friendships and seasons. So what we don't want to do is that we don't want to affect our destinies. I mean, I believe we're here for a purpose, and I want to achieve that purpose. And so I can stand before God and say, I did it. I did what you sent me here to do. Right? Even though it might have taken me a long time to figure out. I digress. No more great digressing. What we don't want to do is to have people in our lives that are hindrance to our destiny. And I value, for me, at least now, is where I am. I truly value what's my destiny. I value what God has for me. I value that more than any relationship in my life. That I'm okay to lose the people that need to let go of people that need to let go, so that I can achieve what God has for me, if those people are not to be part of my life at that time. So that's again why I say I hold things loosely and I hold people loosely. But I also think just my past, from my own past experience and the things that I went through when I was young, has enabled me to make friendships, be able to let go of them if they have to go, and reconnect later or not. But I think more than a lot of people tend to be okay with it. I'm going to take my ship. But that's because of sometimes you go through life experiences that kind of train you to do that. So, but I am a very big proponent of us not allowing other people to affect our destiny. Like you and me, our destinies are more important. Us doing what God sent us here to do is more important than any relationship or anything in our lives. So I'm going to leave it there. Maybe I will do a video one day on destiny and relationships. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, look at the time. Okay, I do have to go get my kids pretty soon here. So something else in rebuilding is managing, and this is a big one, managing the gap between where you are and where you are going. This is the place where there is a lot of confusion for a lot of women. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of pain, torment, whatever you name it. The gap. You were something else, and now you're becoming something else. And while you're no longer what you used to be, and you're not what you want to be. So you're in between. And living in that tension can bring anxiety, can bring fear, can bring a lot of emotions. Identity crisis happens there a lot, especially when you're transitioning from one thing to the other. And I went through this when I left the business that I had for more than 10 years and was now getting into AI consultants. There was a time where I'm like, I think I've shared this before, like people ask you, what do you do? And it's the worst question ever. Why does it matter what I do? Anyway, but you get those kind of questions. Oh, what are you doing? What work? And you're like, right now I'm trying to figure myself out. Right? It's like I feel like at a year or so that I was kind of trying to figure myself out. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. This is before I even wanted to do the AI stuff. I was just trying different things and trying to figure out what I wanted to do and what would fit with the version of life that I wanted, because I had a business before and done all the entrepreneur thing. And I was like, what do I actually want to do? And if I'm going to do a business, what does it look like? And what I wanted to feel like, all those things I started to question, which I'd never done the first time I built the first business. So that gap where you're being asked questions that feel very awkward for you to answer, because you might just be confused and really don't know what you want. Maybe you did quit the career that you had that was paying a lot of money, but you're just tired and burnt out. And you're like, I need a break. And I need to figure myself out. I need to figure what I want to do. And that gap is very difficult. And we are not here to romanticize it. It's not a very fun place to be. I feel like internally it's not, especially. And we also don't want to rush it, right? Just because it's uncomfortable, because this is a place of discomfort too, that you and I would have to face. There is a lot of discomfort there, a lot of discomfort. And it's not easy. The gap, the valley, whatever you want to call it, it is not easy. And in there, so this is the thing that happens in the rebuilding as we are transitioning. These are the things that happen that maybe people don't talk about, but they're there. They are there, and I've gone through it, and I know that it is very difficult when you're like, so who am I? Because you're questioning your identity because you're so used to being something else, and now you're no longer that. I was not even really a stay-at-home mom. I had not been, even though I my business, I worked mainly out of the office in our home. I never really considered myself a stay-at-home mom. I've always thought I was like an entrepreneur. Since I was young, I've always had that kind of identity. And so when the business is no longer there and you're figuring out the next thing, it's like, oh, so where am I now? And that can be terrifying. That is unnerving. And but I also think it's important to go through that, because you realize what you're attached to. What exactly were you building your worth on? And I had to do a lot of internal work about that. And that was not easy, took some time, but this is, I guess, why I'm here doing this Second Act Collective, because I realized what I went through was challenging, was difficult, transitioning from one thing to the other, and the identity crisis I went through, the shame, the guilt, that you name it, the emotions that you go through, the confusion, it's just there. So, all right, let me hurry up because I do have to go get my kids. We are also, what I also want to talk about is that in this rebuilding, you're finding different people, which links to us letting go of old relationships. Is that, we are trying to find relationships that are built on value, what we value in reality of where we are. And not really, and no longer are we doing things we did in our 20s and 30s, which is, you're doing things for proximity. You want to be where the people with money are, or people who are influential, or people who grow your network, or whatever motives we do when we're young, and still do sometimes when you're old. So it's not just the young people. And we're also not doing things, we're not building relationships out of performance, where we are constantly performing for these people to accept and love us. And so we're building relationships from a very different place this time. And this is the thing we want to work in the rebuilding. We don't want to rebuild the same old walls and then have the same old trauma and same old problems. We want to build from a place of values, what really matters to us, what is in alignment with us, what's, what is the reality, where am I? And where we are just honest with each other, where you are honest with yourself. I think that's the most important thing. And one of my values, my core values, is honesty. So I value people who tell the truth. I value the truth in the people I'm going to have deep connections with. So, those are the things that you're now finding your people, finding your community. Is you are now, getting to your 50s and 60s. You want that because you don't want to keep rebuilding in your 78 again. You want to rebuild something that's going to be long lasting and last longer than what we did when we in our 20s. In the rebuilding as well is that we are stopping the whole apology thing. We are exercising the quiet power of knowing what we will do and what we don't want to do. And this is, I think it's good to be in this place. This is the thing that I'm enjoying about being in my late 40s and getting into 50, is I just feel like there's a confidence of, I do not have to accommodate a lot of rubbish from people. I don't. There is some quiet power that comes with just knowing who you are and who I am in Christ, who I am in God. Like, I do not have to tolerate a lot of things. I do not have to, make myself something so that I can be loved or appreciated or be prioritized. So I don't have to apologize for who I am. I don't have to justify it. Isn't that wonderful? I don't have to apologize for the things I desire and want, for the life that I want. It doesn't mean I'm mean, doesn't mean I don't, listen to other people, but you're just in a place, and I think this is the quiet power that women get at this age. You're just in a place where you're like, I'm confident in who I am. I can walk in a room. I don't need you to like me. I don't need you to love me. I don't. I'm okay the way I am. And you're in a place where I'm not defined by money. I'm not defined by success. I'm not defined that I'm a mother, a wife, or whatever. I am simply defined by who I am as a person. And I know my worth. And that's all that matters. And there is such a freedom to this. There is a freedom that is unbelievable. And I'm like, oh, I was just looking to see. I thought I saw a squirrel. We have a lot of squirrels that run through our yard. Anyway, there is a freedom that comes in, and I'm excited. I think I said this, I'll be 50 in next year, right? So I'm excited about being in my 50s, because I honestly think it's like the decade of I don't care. The I don't care decade, whatever. Like, once you're like in your late 40s, 50s, you're just like, there's an I don't care thing about you that I don't know. So I'm like, why are people scared of getting older, right? I don't know. There's so much freedom, and I like that. So we're not going to apologize for things. We're not going to apologize for what we desire. We're not going to apologize for what we like. We're not going to apologize or explain ourselves. No, I just don't like to be treated that way. And that's really it. I don't have to answer that. And that's it. And no is a full sentence. That's it. So anyway, I'm not going to go on that tangent. But we're also not going to be, defined by what people call success. Actually, we're not going to define our own success by what either the world, the society, the people in your family, whoever else has tried to define it for you. We are redefining success for ourselves, first internally. excuse me, and then out there. When no one is watching, we in this rebuilding, we are redefining. What does success mean to you? You know, is it building that business? And if you're building it to what's revenue a year, right? What does that success? Because no longer should your success be attached to how well your business do. So when you're building this business, you're building it for the financial freedom, you're building it for the independence, you're building it for the impact that you want to make, but it's no longer attached to your worth. At least it shouldn't be at the age we're at. So we are redefining success based on what matters to us, what we value, what we desire, what we want, what God wants for us. And so this is part of the rebuilding, is the redefining of success for yourself. Like what does it look like? Okay, that's my alarm. All right. I have a few more things to talk about. We are in the rebuilding, we are working on the actual energy, like what is our body saying now, not the aspiration of, oh, I need to work out 5 times a week, I need to do this, that, you know, like this thing, because we see people on YouTube, on TV, whatever, saying all this kind of doing all this stuff. We are really like working with what we have. What does that look like? How do I design this life for what works for me, what fits me, my personality, my energy level, what fits me? It doesn't mean we're not pushing ourselves, it doesn't mean we're just settling. It just means we are redefining things, we are redesigning our lives so that there's an energy flow that works for us, that works for what our bodies are going through. Because, you know, the changes you go through, like after 45 in your body, is just crazy. Nobody tells you or warns you about this. I wish they would, but I wasn't. But there are a lot of changes that happen as a woman that are not talked about, and we're still supposed to be, you know, go, 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 go. We are still supposed to be productive. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying there's a certain level that is required of understanding about the energy levels that women tend to have after 45 and what that looks like. Right? So we are not working on aspirations. We're working on what is actually, what works for me, as my body, as I am, what works for my health, what works for my mental sanity, all the stuff. That's kind of how we're now redesigning this life. And we are also gonna build this where we are building in private first. We are required to go through it, I think, you know, that you have to, just my opinion, that it's good to take some quiet time, some quiet season, I would say, a season where you're doing the work quietly, you know, starting with the inner work. So we are practicing building in private before we build in public. Talking about building public, I am working on an app which I'll be building in public, but in terms of rebuilding your life, you wanna have that season of quietness, of figuring all these things that we've talked about. Because if you don't take the time to be quiet, if you don't take the time to first build in private, you are gonna probably build the same thing that you did years ago, that you'll be like, I don't like this life anymore. And we're not into doing repeat series, right? We're not a Netflix show, whatever. We want to rebuild the right way this time. So my advice to you, per se, just something that I think would be helpful to you is like, take the time to build this life privately. Journal, pray, talk to God about it. Spend that times walking, and this is what I do too, right? So I'm not just saying this to you, it's also the things that I have to put into practice as I'm designing this life at this stage of my life, what I want to look like. I've done a lot of the internal work. Still we have some more. it's never, you know, done. But just taking that time, and I did take some time to think about all these things, and it's very difficult. It's very emotional. but it's the inner work that is required so you can come on the other side. So anyway, I do have to leave and go pick up my kids from school. But this has been wonderful. I love, chatting with you. And if you're a woman over 40, beyond, and beyond, please subscribe to the channel and share this with your friends. I would really appreciate that. I really appreciate people watching the videos. And subscribe to my newsletter, which is our community, where I share things there. But I do look forward to seeing you, and I do have to rush. So I'll see you next time.